Hi, it's Sam from Tarot for Writing, and I am here with a really fun VR to Sylvia from Fairlight Tarot that's called #Beloved Monster Decks. And the idea here is to pick decks, tarot decks that depict 10 of our favorite monsters. And it's just perfect for this time of year, for spooky season. I know my family and I have been watching quite a few movies that had these monsters in them. So I took a little bit of time tonight before the full moon to sit down and come up with my representations for these decks. Now, my tarot collection is still fairly small, so it may not be the best representation, and I definitely encourage you to head on over to Fairlight Tarot to subscribe to her channel to take a look at the decks she picked, and I also encourage you to follow the tag Beloved Monster Decks. I'll have all of that linked in the description below, and see what other tarot collectors and tarot tubers came up with for their monsters. But here is my list. I hope you enjoy it, and let's dive right in. And the first monster in the first deck is Frankenstein. And that's a collage deck that is misunderstood, but has a heart of gold. So fair warning, I don't have a lot of collage decks. It's not really my style. I believe I have 2 in my collection, and they're both in here. But the one I chose that you might recognize from the back is the Antique Anatomy by Claire Goodchild. And while I love this deck, it is a little bit intimidating still to me. And I think the reason it is often misunderstood, as we flip through a couple of the cards here, is, you know, number one, it's a little bit morbid. So if that's not your style, that might be something that can be a little bit challenging. But the reason I picked it is because of the minors. They're very pippish, so let's get into some of them here. So here we have the elixirs, which are the cups, and it's fairly pippish. So that's kind of what makes me understand this deck a little less and makes it a little bit more challenging for me to work with it. But all in all, it's a great deck, and I think it is often misunderstood, but from the little bit that I've worked with it, it certainly has a heart of gold and gets you some amazing readings. So that's my Frankenstein deck. Let's move her out of the way. And next up, we have the Dracula. That is a deck that's sensual and sophisticated. And I'm going to be a little bit on the nose here. Again, you probably recognize these backs. This is the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. Yes, vampire deck for vampires. A little bit on the nose, but this is an amazing deck. Very sensual, but the reason I chose it as my sophisticated deck is because of this. This is Phantasmagoria, the guidebook that goes along with the deck, and it is absolutely amazing. This first introduction section here alone is well worth checking out the deck. It goes really deep into the Kabbalah, as you can see here, and it does so in a very concise way. Definitely something worth checking out, and you get quite a bit of a description for every single card. So if we look right here at the Lovers as just as an example, you get about 5 pages worth of text and inspiration and explanation about the card. So that is why I consider the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels my Dracula deck a deck that is sensual and sophisticated. All right, and next up we have the Werewolf. And I actually had 2 close contenders here, but the one that won out is the Aquarian Tarot by David Palladini. This is the Tarot in a Tin version, and this is what I use quite a bit for my full moon readings as well as my new moon readings. The other deck that I considered is something you will see a little bit further down the list, and that's the Deviant Moon Tarot. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I love the kind of airy quality of this deck. It's a very clear, straight to the point reader, but it's just odd enough with the art to kind of really get me into that full moon contemplative sort of energy. So that is my choice for the Werewolf, a deck best used under a full moon. And I'll be setting this aside to do my reading a little later tonight with it. All right, moving right along. Next up is the Grim Reaper, and that is a deck that feels very final and unmovable. And for that, I chose the Barbara Walker Tarot. Another great deck, another Tarot in a Tin deck. And this one, to me, just doesn't pull punches. Anytime I do a reading with this, it is straight to the point, tells me what I don't want to hear. It just does not pull any punches. So one thing to keep in mind, if you're feeling vulnerable, this is not the deck you want to pull out for a reading. You know, you have to be ready to hear the harsh truths that it shares with you. And again, this is the Barbara Walker Tarot, and this is my choice for the Grim Reaper. Next up, we're going to look at the Creature from the Black Lagoon, as I reach over here to grab my decks. And for this, I have another absolute favorite of mine. And the Creature from the Black Lagoon is a deck that loves water but isn't afraid to get dirty. And for this, I chose the Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian. This is such a great deck, and it honestly could have fit quite a few other monster positions in here. But I absolutely adore this deck. It has an earthy energy to me. It also has this sort of watery energy to me. And I think the other reason why I chose it that this as this monster is that I purchased my copy in Savannah when I was hanging out there with some friends for a retreat. And we spent quite a bit of time by the water, and if you're familiar with the area, it is, you know, while not a lagoon, there is plenty of water around with the rivers and being fairly close to the ocean as well. So again, this is Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian, and that is my choice for Creature of the Black Lagoon. Alrighty, next up, we're gonna look at the Freddy Krueger. And this is where I thought the Deviant Moon by Patrick Valenza would be the perfect choice. again, I was very tempted to make this my werewolf deck. Oh, and we have them upside down. Let's fix that. There we go. Sorry, this is my first VR. Please bear with me. So I thought this was a great choice for the Freddy Krueger. A scruffy deck that has a terrifying sense of humor. And you have to admit, you know, this is just perfect for that kind of energy. There is definitely a very dark sense of humor. Gotta love this Seven of Swords. And while I'm not sure that I would call it scruffy, I just thought this would be a great choice. Flip through a couple more images, give you a good look at them. But yeah, this is my choice for the Freddy Krueger. And let's move right along. Next up is the one I probably struggled with the most to pick. This is the Chucky, a doll-like deck that may stab you in the back. I had a few choices and I thought about pulling in some oracle decks as well, but since everything else was tarot, I thought I would just stick it out. And what I chose is the Santa Muerte by Fabio Listrani. I've been on the fence about getting this deck for quite some time. I absolutely love the backs. These are some of my favorite card backings ever. Because I was on the fence, I decided to get the mini just to give it a try. And it does have like a very doll-like quality to it if those dolls are creepy. And it's definitely a deck that challenges me. The imagery is very much not Rider-Waite-Smith. There are hints of it here and there, but it certainly challenges you. For example, look at this Knight of Swords. What does it mean that he's basically eating his sword? And why is he stuck in these flowers instead of charging ahead? Or here we have the Two of Wands, which looks more like the Two of Swords to me. But again, it's a great deck and something I look forward to digging into deeper and learning more, connecting more with in the months and years to come. But this is my choice for Chucky, the Fabio Listrani Santa Muerte Tarot. All right, and moving right along, next up is the Zombie, an airy deck that is hungry for brains. And here you get to meet my second collage deck. And this is the Crow Tarot by MJ Kalain. And this deck is amazing. It just has so many layers. I was really wondering how I would do with a deck dedicated to one type of animal, to just a crow. But something about these images called out to me. And it's just been working like a charm. It is one of my favorite decks, one of my most used decks. And I particularly like to use this for larger, longer outlooking spreads. So this is what I used for my year ahead spread for this year, for example. It definitely challenges you. It was my daily draw for quite a few months as well. And it never failed to give me something deep to think about. Just the small little details in here. And what does it mean that Temperance is a crow who is pouring from one cup into the other? Or here in the Four of Pentacles, we have him by a riverside or by a lake with a city in the background. A lot of stuff, a lot of great details to dig into with this deck. And definitely a great choice for the zombie, a deck that is hungry for brains. And I don't think I showed you the backs on this one. Here they are. Just a lovely little feathery pattern. All right, next up for number 9, we have Pennywise the Clown. And now we're getting into my most used deck other than your traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. And again, this is a deck you're familiar with. You will recognize these cards. This is the Everyday Witch Tarot by Deborah Blake. And the Pennywise the Clown, the prompt is a deck that is deceivingly whimsical, but actually very intense. And that is what the Everyday Witch is for me and does for me. You know, the whimsical, I think, is very self-explanatory. We have these almost fairy tale images, sometimes a little witchy, sometimes quite modern, like this witch sitting on the beach, you know, aside from the hat. Very traditional, very modern images. But it gives me super clear readings, and it's very intense. It's not afraid to call me out, to tell me what I should be doing. And it's not afraid to keep telling me a similar message over and over again until it feels like the deck is almost hitting me over the head, waiting for me to finally get it and finally get with the program. That said, unlike some of the other decks, like the Barbara Walker, for example, it does this in a kind and loving way. Again, one of my favorites. I also own the mini version of this. If you watched my Darkwood Tarot review video, you got an idea for how I like using the mini in combination with the full version of the deck. And with this as well, the guidebook is amazing. So this is my Pennywise the Clown deck, a deck that is deceivingly whimsical, but actually quite intense. And that was the Everyday Witch by Deborah Blake. Okay, last but not least, we have the Mummy. And when I sat down to record this, this is the one where I knew I had to record this video. It was so obvious that this is the deck that represents the Mummy for me. And the Mummy is a deck that is covered in many layers. And for this, I chose the Darkwood Tarot by Sarah Graham. And if you have worked with this deck at all, you know how amazing the guidebook is, how it alone provides you with many layers to read with this deck. It is an amazing shadow work deck. Yet at the same time, we have some images that are very closely related to the Rider-Waite-Smith system. So you can grab this deck, give it a good shuffle, and start reading with it right away if you're familiar with the RWS. But you can also pull in all these fairy tale meanings, the plant magic meanings. For example, how does the mandrake root, the mandrake plant, relate to the Four of Coins, the Four of Pentacles? And I adore that the pentacles are apples, which gives us a few more layers to dig in. And then just the amazing artwork in this as well. Just so much to think about, so much to study. And like I said, the guidebook is amazing as well. So this is number 10, the Mummy, the Darkwood Tarot by Sarah Graham. And that's a deck that's covered in many layers. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed spending a little bit of time with me and my beloved monster decks on this Saturday evening. At least that's when I'm recording it. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun. And please take a moment to check out the tag Beloved Monster Decks. I have it linked in the description below. And check out Sylvia from Fairlight Tarot, who came up with this amazing and fun idea. And if you enjoyed this video, I would very much appreciate a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more from me, hit subscribe. Happy Halloween.